Imagine you have just received a raise. Perhaps it is a significant 10% or 15, or even a promotion that jumps you into a new bracket entirely. For a few weeks you feel it. The numbers in your bank account look a little healthier at the end of the month. The occasional dinner out no longer requires mental arithmetic. And that low-grade anxiety about an unexpected expense begins to fade. And then quietly something shifts. 6 months later you are asked how things are going financially, and you pause. You realize with some confusion that you do not feel any richer than you did before the raise. You have adjusted. The new normal has become simply normal. And this experience, so common that it is almost universal, points to one of the most powerful and least understood forces in personal finance. The fact that the human brain was not designed to accumulate wealth, but to adapt to it. This phenomenon has a name in behavioral economics. Some call it hedonic adaptation, others the hedonic treadmill. It describes the tendency of human beings to return to a relatively stable level of satisfaction, regardless of the positive or negative changes that occur in their lives. Win the lottery, and within a year or two, your baseline happiness is likely to be roughly where it started. Lose a limb, and the same holds true. The mind is a remarkable stabilization engine, smoothing out the peaks and filling in the valleys so that we can remain functional, focused on the next threat or opportunity, rather than dwelling on what has already been gained or lost. But while this trait served our ancestors well on the savannah, where a full stomach today did not guarantee food tomorrow, it creates a profound structural problem in the context of modern financial life. Because if you cannot feel richer when you become richer, then what exactly are you working for? Let us step back for a moment and consider the mathematics of income growth in isolation, without the psychological overlay. Suppose you earn $50,000 a year and receive a $5,000 raise. On paper, your purchasing power has increased by 10%. If your expenses remain flat, that $5,000 is pure surplus money that could be invested, saved, or used to buy genuine improvements in your quality of life. And yet, the psychological research suggests that within approximately 6 to 8 weeks, your brain will have fully recalibrated to this new level of income. The $5,000 no longer registers as surplus. It becomes part of your baseline expectation. You begin to structure your lifestyle around it, perhaps increasing your rent slightly, upgrading your car, or simply ceasing to notice that you used to worry about smaller expenses. The raise disappears into the fabric of your life, not because you spent it irresponsibly, but because your brain literally stopped treating it as a gain. This is where the trap begins to reveal its true structure. If each raise simply resets your baseline, then the only way to maintain a sense of progress is to keep increasing your income indefinitely, chasing a feeling of forward momentum that recedes with every step. But income cannot increase indefinitely, at least not for most people, and even if it could, the rate of adaptation tends to accelerate, meaning that each successive raise provides a shorter burst of satisfaction before it, too, is absorbed into the background. What starts as a rational pursuit of financial improvement becomes a psychological treadmill, where the effort required to maintain the same level of emotional reward grows while the actual gains in wealth and security, measured objectively, may be substantial. To understand why this happens, we need to look at the neurological and cognitive mechanisms beneath the surface. The brain does not process absolute quantities. It processes differences relative to a constantly shifting reference point. This is why a $10 discount feels significant on a $50 purchase, but meaningless on a $500 purchase, even though the absolute savings are identical. Your reference point changes based on context, and in the domain of income and wealth, your reference point is whatever you have most recently become accustomed to. This is not a character flaw or a sign of greed. It is a fundamental feature of how predictive coding works in the mammalian brain. Your mind is constantly building models of expected outcomes, and when reality exceeds expectation, you get a brief burst of dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with reward prediction error. But once the new outcome becomes expected, the dopamine response vanishes, and you are left with a new baseline and a new set of expectations. Now, consider how this interacts with the structure of modern employment and consumption. We are surrounded by constant signals about what constitutes a normal lifestyle, and those signals are almost always just slightly ahead of where we currently are. Social media feeds, advertising, the homes of colleagues, the vacations of acquaintances, all of these serve to elevate our reference points continuously, ensuring that our expectations rise at least as fast as our incomes. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply the natural result of living in a society where conspicuous consumption has been democratized and broadcast to everyone simultaneously. Your neighbor's new car does not just represent their purchase. It becomes a data point that your brain uses to recalibrate what is normal, what is expected, and therefore what would constitute a gain. The mathematical consequence of this is stark. If your expenses rise in lockstep with your income, or even slightly slower, your savings rate remains flat, and your long-term wealth accumulation proceeds at a linear pace rather than an exponential one. But if your expenses rise faster than your income, which often happens when people interpret raises as permission to upgrade their lifestyle across multiple categories simultaneously, you can actually find yourself with less financial flexibility after earning more. This is the hidden math of lifestyle creep, and it explains why so many high-income professionals report feeling just as financially stressed as they did when they were earning half as much. The absolute numbers have changed, but the ratio of income to expectations has remained constant. There is a deeper layer here, one that touches on the systemic structure of how wealth is actually built in the modern economy. If you look at the financial trajectories of those who successfully accumulate significant wealth over time, a pattern emerges that runs counter to the instinct to upgrade lifestyle in response to income gains. They tend to treat raises not as increases in consumption capacity, but as opportunities to increase their savings rate while holding their lifestyle constant for as long as possible. This is often described as living below your means, but that phrase undersells what is actually happening. It is not about deprivation or frugality. It is about deliberately refusing to allow your reference point to rise, so that the gap between your income and your expectations continues to widen over time, generating a growing surplus that can be deployed into assets that produce their own returns. This is where the mathematics become genuinely powerful. If you can hold your lifestyle constant while your income grows, even modestly, the surplus you generate is not linear. It compounds. Every dollar that you save and invest is not just a dollar you did not spend. It is a dollar that begins to earn its own dollars, which then earn their own dollars in turn. The difference between someone who saves 10% of their income and someone who saves 20% is not simply a matter of accumulating twice as much over the same period. Because of compounding, the gap widens exponentially over time. And the person who saves 20% is not necessarily earning more than the person who saves 10%. They may simply have made the decision at each raise to redirect the increase into savings rather than into lifestyle upgrades. But there is another dimension to this that goes beyond individual behavior. And it is worth considering how the structure of the economy itself interacts with these psychological tendencies. The modern financial system is built on the assumption that consumers will behave exactly as the hedonic treadmill predicts. That they will spend most or all of their disposable income, that they will treat increases in income as increases in consumption capacity, and that they will remain in a state of perpetual pursuit rather than arrival. This is not accidental. The economy requires consumption to grow in order to generate the kind of steady growth that markets expect and that political systems rely on. When you look at the incentives that are baked into the system, from advertising that constantly tells you that you are missing something, to social comparison that constantly shows you what others have, to financial products that make it easy to borrow against future income, it becomes clear that the treadmill is not simply a quirk of human psychology. It is a feature of the system that we inhabit. And yet, understanding this feature gives you a kind of leverage that is not available to those who remain unaware of it. Once you recognize that the satisfaction you are chasing through income growth will inevitably fade as your expectations rise, you have a choice. You can continue to chase it, running faster on the treadmill, knowing that you will never arrive at a point of lasting satisfaction, or you can step off the treadmill, at least partially, by redirecting your focus away from consumption and toward the things that actually do produce durable satisfaction. What are those things? The research on happiness and well-being is remarkably consistent on this point. Autonomy, the sense that you have control over your time and your choices, produces durable satisfaction. Security, the knowledge that you are protected against catastrophic loss, produces durable satisfaction. Connection, the quality of your relationships with other people, produces durable satisfaction. Mastery, the feeling of making progress at something that matters to you, produces durable satisfaction. Notice that none of these things are directly purchased with consumption, though they can be supported by financial resources. A larger house does not necessarily give you more autonomy. A more expensive car does not necessarily deepen your relationships. A higher salary does not necessarily increase your sense of mastery. These are the things that adaptation does not erode, because they are not about expectation versus reality. They are about the underlying structure of your life. This brings us to a shift in perspective that is subtle but profound. Instead of asking, how much more money do I need to be happy? A question that has no stable answer because the goalposts will move every time you get close. You might ask, what structure of income and spending would allow me to maximize autonomy, security, connection, and mastery? For many people, the answer to that question involves a savings rate that is high enough to build genuine financial resilience over time, a lifestyle that is intentionally held below their full earning capacity, and a relationship with money that treats it as a tool for buying freedom rather than a scorecard for measuring success. Consider the mathematics of this alternative path. If you earn $75,000 a year and live on $50,000, you have a $25,000 surplus. If you invest that surplus at a modest real return of 5%, you will have accumulated approximately $1 million in inflation-adjusted terms after about 25 years. That $1 million can then generate $40,000 to $50,000 per year in sustainable withdrawals, meaning that your investments can replace your lifestyle spending indefinitely. You have, in effect, purchased your freedom from the necessity of trading time for money. The person who earns $150,000 but lives on $140,000 is on a much slower path to the same destination, despite earning twice as much because their surplus is so much smaller relative to their lifestyle. The numbers here are illustrative, not prescriptive, but they reveal a truth that is counterintuitive. Financial independence is less about how much you earn than about the gap between what you earn and what you spend, and your ability to protect that gap from the relentless pressure of adaptation. The challenge, of course, is that protecting that gap requires swimming against the current of both your own neurology and the broader culture. Your brain will constantly try to reset your reference point upward, telling you that you deserve the upgrade, that you have worked hard enough to treat yourself, that everyone else is doing it. The culture will reinforce this message at every turn, through advertising that frames consumption as self-care, through social media that showcases the highlight reels of others, through the subtle pressure of keeping up with peers whose financial situations you cannot actually see. To hold your lifestyle constant while your income grows is to practice a kind of deliberate nonconformity that can feel strange, even uncomfortable, especially when those around you are upgrading their lives in visible ways. But it is also, for many, the only reliable path to the kind of financial security that actually delivers on the promise that money makes, the promise of freedom, of peace of mind, of the ability to make choices based on what you want rather than what you can afford. There is a final dimension to this that is worth considering, and it has to do with how we measure progress over the course of a life. If you're on the treadmill earning more, spending more, adapting, earning more, your progress is measured in increments of income and consumption that leave no lasting trace. The money flows through your accounts and out again, creating a series of momentary peaks that are quickly smoothed over by the machinery of adaptation. But if you step off the treadmill, or at least slow it down, your progress is measured in something more durable. The steadily growing balance of assets that represent your accumulated freedom, the decreasing vulnerability to financial shocks, the increasing ability to say no to work that does not serve you, to take risks that might lead to more meaningful engagement with the world, spend your time in ways that reflect your actual values rather than your conditioned desires. These are not the kinds of progress that show up in a social media feed or impress people at a dinner party, but they are the kinds of progress that actually change the texture of your daily experience. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden in the phenomena of adaptation. The mind will always adjust to whatever you give it, whether that is a new car or a larger house or a higher salary. But there are some things that the mind does not adapt to in the same way. The absence of financial worry, the feeling of having options, the knowledge that you are not dependent on a job you hate, the time to spend with people you love. These are not subject to the same diminishing returns because they are not about peaks of pleasure that fade into the background. They are about the removal of chronic stress and the addition of structural freedom. When you redirect your financial life toward these goals, you are not chasing a feeling that will evaporate as soon as your expectations rise. You are building a foundation that supports a different kind of relationship with money entirely, one in which money serves you rather than the other way around, in which your attention is freed up to focus on the things that actually make a life worth living, and in which the question is no longer how much is enough, because you have already found the answer.